Chad, I wanted to talk about a video today. It's a PragerU video, so it's low hanging fruit. But
Right.
somebody planted this tree. I think it's apropos for us to like pick the fruit from it.
Is
And
this that Prager University?
it is Prager University. That storied ivy growing on the walls,
Yeah, painted on the walls, you mean? Yeah, painted on the walls. It's actually
painted on the
wallpaper.
wall, painted on the wall of the strip mall. That strip mall in New Jersey.
It's not officially a university. They just called it one and then they got in trouble for it. And now
So they
they're
just
just
put a
you.
U.
We don't actually have classes or teach anything
Prager
other than
U.
propaganda, but
It's kind of like the Vry. The Vry
kind of.
was doing that shady shit. The title of the video is "Why Do You Hate Conservatives?" Let's
Let me count the
watch.
way.
Why do you hate conservatives? Well, let's not say hate. Let's say dislike, because you don't really hate anyone.
That's
You may dislike them because they want to ban abortion. Conservatives
Yep.
say they're all for freedom, but when it comes to a woman's freedom to choose what she wants to do with her own body, they sing a different tune. You may dislike them because they oppress people of color and deny the fact that America is systemically racist. Conservatives say that everybody is equal regardless of race, and that racism has little to no effect on the daily lives of people of color. So, they just ignore the issue altogether. You may dislike them because they don't believe in climate change. Scientists keep telling us we're overheating the planet, and conservatives don't seem to care. They're more concerned about profits than people. But what good is money if you have no planet to spend it on?
so. I just want to stop at this point in the video and just say they really should change the title of it from "Why Do You Hate Conservatives?" to just "Why You Hate Conservatives."
Yeah,
Because, like,
exactly.
you know what I mean?
Well,
Like, they're listing all the things that are like, that's the problem. That's the problem with conservatives.
and that they so convincingly because they have look at her with her tattoos and
Yeah.
her coolness. So she can't like conservatives,
Well,
right?
I
It's
I
like,
guess she's uh she's one of the people that were like, she's like Dave Rubin. They say they were left wingers, and now they've been so disgusted with the terribleness of liberalism that they're now conservative. So she's one of the ones doing that grift where people get on the left get tired of them, so they switch over to the right and they have a whole new audience, and then they sort of become more important in that sphere because look, even the leftists are saying the same things that conservatives are saying.
I just think that you know they're selling you something and they're telling you things that are all true, and it's like, yeah, this is why we hate them, and then they're gonna try to backpedal and say no, 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 but
Yeah,
really this is what it really means.
I don't know. I guess we'll see what she does. But anyway, I'm going to continue here.
You may dislike them because they're obsessed with guns. How are we ever going to stop gun violence if we don't get guns off the streets? And how are we ever going to get guns off the streets if conservatives block every common sense gun law? You may dislike them because they're so intolerant. What's the harm of calling somebody by their preferred pronouns? Why can't conservatives just show some compassion instead of obsessing over every kind of behavior they don't like? You may dislike them because if they got their way, they'd get rid of democracy and establish an authoritarian theocracy. Bye-bye separation of church and state.
Yeah.
Hello, fascism.
It's just,
Holy.
in my head, I'm just like, okay, what are the rebuttals going to be? Just like you said, what can your angle be to like, but where's the big but in this video, right?
Yeah, because that's funny. It's all of these are all statements. Like they're not open statements. They're like, you may hate Republicans because they are against abortion, that they hate the planet, that they're obsessed with guns. But these are like, yes, is that why I hate them? Because they're obsessed with guns? Because they are obsessed with guns. So, but she's gonna say, well,
Yeah, right.
but
We
here's
should be.
why they're obsessed with
Yeah,
guns.
here's why we should be obsessed with guns. Here
That's
where we
right.
shouldn't care about the every year being record high temperatures, and the next year will be even higher, right? Like,
That's right. Oh, this is why we should make
yeah,
sure that those women folk don't
yeah,
make decisions for themselves.
exactly.
After all that, you
All
might
right,
sum up conservatives with one word.
Assholes.
assholes.
The ugh. Look at the. I think I could think of a few choice words more than ugh. When I think of all that, when I think of women not having the right autonomy to their own body, when I think about the destruction of the planet, when I see a mass shooting every single day in America, I don't think, ugh,
Yeah.
God,
Oh, that again.
Exactly. Another shooting, ugh.
Ugh. If any of this resonates with you, I get it. I've been there. But, and this surprised me,
But I told you, here comes the big but.
I found they actually have reasons for thinking the way they.
It's what you said. It's what you said.
Wow.
They actually have
reasons.
reasons to be obsessed with guns.
Well, now it all makes sense.
Here are some of them. On abortion.
Abortion.
To start, we can agree that no one likes abortion. But there is a clear divide on the issue. Progressives focus their attention on the mother. Conservatives, while they have compassion for the mother, focus their attention on the baby.
Okay, first thing, no baby. There's no baby involved.
There's no. Not
Show me the baby. There's no baby. It's a zygote.
No, it's a sperm that just entered an egg and has started to do something, and that's it.
And then, and for some reason, as soon as that zygote is born, they lose all compassion for it. You know,
Yeah.
It's like,
what color is it? Let's throw it in jail.
you know that when a woman has a baby in a forced circumstance, right? Like we all know just how great that baby's gonna be raised. Like the odds are how great it's gonna be raised, right? She's in a forced circumstance that makes her regret that life coming into her life. You know what I mean? Like,
how do you look beyond the offspring of a violent rape you experienced? How do you look? Oh, but it's still a baby. Oh no, I don't know if it would be physically possible.
It can't be helped that there's some animosity, some regret towards that child, right? And then so babies in these circumstances will need more help from the social safety net, and that's the thing conservatives hate. They want to yank the rug out from underneath you as soon as you're born.
Yeah, because it's really just about power over other people. It's saying that women don't have enough value to make a decision for themselves, but men do all the time.
They see a human being growing in a mother's womb as innocent and vulnerable. Those babies deserve to be protected, since they obviously can't protect themselves. On racism, conservatives don't deny that racist people exist, but when it comes to the narrative of systemic racism, conservatives are unconvinced. Of course, there are disparities in this.
Stop it. Hold on. Because they're the ones who are mostly responsible for that systemic. Ew.
Exactly.
There are racists. My great-grandpappy.
There are humans that are racist, but these humans have no participation in the system. Like, what are they, living on Mars? They're part of the system.
It's crazy. It's like, okay, my great-grandpappy on the plantation.
Exactly.
He paid good money for those people.
Exactly. How can you deny? Like, there's no denying America was built on the back of slaves, and that systemic racism, of course, is permeated all the way through. The system is biased.
These are new hurdles, so there has to have been a system that has worked against them. Having a separate lineup, not allowed to drink from the same water fountain, all those kind of things. It's like, which are insane today. Can you imagine? Yeah, we've come a long way, but it wasn't that long ago.
That's true.
Why assume that these disparities are because of racism? Good schools, good parents, good habits, and good communities would go much further toward alleviating poverty and
all things influenced by this racist system. Like, education is the first thing, and the education, that would go much further to curing racism. Like, the problem is education is influenced by a racist system.
Yeah, and they're in poverty because they haven't been afforded the same opportunities.
Yeah.
And, basically what she's saying is that, like, what this says is, there's no systemic racism. Black people are just dumb.
Exactly.
Like, that's what it's saying, right?
They're too lazy to improve their school system. They
don't get the jobs because they're too stupid to get them. And white people are just generally smarter. Like, it's the fucking most absurd thing to say that this is not this inequality in humanity doesn't exist.
Just name these four things that are obviously influenced by the system, and like these things would fix it. They're the broken things.
Oh, it's that easy. It's like the Bob Newhart sketch on SNL, when Cameron Diaz goes and starts complaining to her therapist, played by Bob Newhart, and he's just like, stop it. That's the solution. You just stop it.
Opportunity than a lifetime of racial justice movements. By the way, these rules apply to everyone, regardless of skin color.
Okay, stop it again.
Climate change.
All right.
Hold on. Before we get to climate change,
yeah,
this woman, like, she should be ashamed of herself to have delivered those last two lines.
It's a grift.
But she just said, listen, if you just went to school and you just lived better, then, you wouldn't need to ever protest again. Please don't ever protest. Like, protesting is for chumps.
Yeah, in the face of all the social justice movements, like, she never heard of the civil rights movement? Never heard of Martin Luther King?
And here she is, and she's probably, my guess is, like, I'm just going to analyze her for a second.
Yeah.
Right? She's an actress who got hired for this. I don't think she necessarily even believes what she's saying, but she is, like, so trying to, like, let the systemic racism not affect her that she's willing to sell her soul to this conservative rhetoric.
Yep.
And say these things in spite of her of the truth of her what was probably her own experience.
Right.
Because if she didn't have any of those experiences, or her parents didn't, or her friends didn't, it would be very surprising that she wouldn't have any experiences whatsoever.
Exactly.
As pretty as she is and all that, and cool with her tattoos and stuff, but geez,
it's two things. Like, a conservative mindset is she's pulling up the ladder behind her. She's now found her grift, and her grift is to throw everyone of her race under the bus. And the other is like the old canard of conservatism, which is pull up your bootstraps in this completely unlevel system. Pull up your bootstraps and then you'll be a success. Continuing on.
Climate change.
Conservatives have very little faith in computer models that have been inaccurately predicting disaster for nearly half a century. Conservatives have a lot of faith, however, in human ingenuity to overcome climate. What is
Oh my God.
So the computers can't predict major catastrophes accurately. It's like, hey, Tuesday, don't go into work Tuesday. They can't do that. They just have ideas like this could happen. These things are happening. The icebergs are melting. Do you know? So we have a thing called the Bedo system. Yep. I think I'm saying that right. BEDO. And what that is that's the ratio of reflection versus attraction on Earth, right? Dark things attract the sun and light things reflect the sun.
Right.
And as the ice caps get smaller, we have more dark space, right? And that makes the world hotter and hotter and hotter. And at some point, like, imagine a table. Like, if you visualize this as a table made of ice, and that's a large surface that would reflect the light. But then it keeps getting thinner and thinner until it's like paper thin, but it's still reflecting light because it's still the same width and length.
Yep.
But at one moment, the whole thing melts when it's just a paper thin, and then we're fucked, right? And that's science. That's not like interpretation. Oh yeah, how could humans have this effect? We're so insignificant.
I'm hoping that she'll explain even a piece of that. Like, conservatives have very little faith in the models. Why? What models? Like, what are you talking about? They have very little faith across the board of it. That just seems to me like they're just plugging their fingers in their ears.
Is air conditioning but a human adaptation to the environment?
Air conditioning, that's
and it's not really a human adaptation. Like, we didn't like develop built-in air conditioning units in our asses to keep our bodies cold. Like, it's not a human, it's a human invention, not an adaptation.
Right. So she's trying to like bring up the specter of evolution, right? She's like,
yeah, God forbid, but I don't think they believe in evolution.
Exactly.
Right? But 6,000 years ago, God created us with air conditioners, didn't they?
So they thrown all the computer models of climate change, all the science that's available, they've thrown it under the bus. Now she's using kind of sciencey words to like for their side. What is air conditioning?
Of all the things to pick too, right?
Air conditioning. a thing we need more of because the climate is increasing in heat.
Yeah, it's like exactly. We've only invented it because we're
it's human ingenuity.
It's fucking hot.
See Miami or Phoenix for further reference.
Oh, I'm gonna keep
This
going.
is not to say we should simply do nothing. Nuclear power, for example, holds so much promise as a renewable and safe energy source. Conservatives don't understand why environmentalists oppose it. It makes
Never heard of 3 Mile Island, I guess.
Yeah, like I have to say that I'd rather nuclear over coal.
Yeah,
So
this is true.
We need a new technology, and that's true. But I think that that's an easy one because, I think at the end of the day, everybody is good with nuclear.
Yeah.
Some environmentalists no, but
right.
And suspicious that the real agenda behind the environmentalist movement is not saving the planet, but giving more power to the government to control people's lives.
Ugh.
On guns, we all want to live in a safe society. This is why firearms are regulated in every state. But we know bad guys
Regulated in every state. In Florida, this is how it works in Florida. You can just walk into a store, buy a gun. You don't have to sign anything. All you need is a cash to buy it, and you take that thing out. There's no registration. There's no signing of anything. You just take that gun and walk out.
Yeah,
and
but
you can
Bill,
conceal carry it.
But they know who the gun manufacturer sold the guns to. Bob's Gun Emporium. They know there's the regulation right there, and then they taxed it.
That's exactly right. When she says regulate in every state, what regulation? Like they have to say what the name of the gun is.
Exactly.
They have to it has to fire the bullet out of the barrel as fast as possible. Like, is that the regulation?
Always find a way to get guns. See Chicago and Baltimore for further reference. That's why conservatives want guns, to protect themselves from the bad guys.
Who have guns.
And how do the bad guys have guns? Okay, so let's answer that question.
Yeah.
So many bad guys have guns. They don't sign things. They'd probably just go to Florida and buy it.
Or not even that.
Or they steal it from somebody who got it.
Exactly. They break in, they do a B&E, and they come out with a whole treasure trove of guns.
You know what happens if somebody breaks into my house? They might get my lightsaber. But it's not real.
It's just
but there's no guns.
It's just you making noise.
Exactly.
It's just you going
dark
at the burglar.
That's right. And then he's going to pull out his own toy one because he doesn't have a gun either.
And the worst thing that's happened, the most injury you get is you're both deeply embarrassed about yourselves.
Yeah. And they were like, oh yeah, Star Wars is cool.
And then he walks back out the door, and that's it.
Exactly. And then I call the cops and they say, well, you got to come down and fill out a report. I'm like,
this is just such a circular argument.
It's a dumb argument.
This is why there are so many guns. It's just that they keep doing this circular argument, and that's also why police response in America has gotten so radical and violent, right? Is because now when they pull over someone at a traffic stop, when they go to do a wellness check at somebody's house, odds are those people will be armed, so they have to respond with armed approach right away, right?
Yeah.
It's not much more complicated than that. Conservatives see tolerance as a two-way street. If someone demands to be addressed by certain pronouns and considers it intolerant if you don't comply, conservatives wonder why that isn't intolerant. Why are a conservative's moral or religious beliefs less worthy of respect than anyone else's? On authoritarianism,
I'm not quite
whenever
sure.
conservatives win,
I don't quite understand that part.
Well, she's saying this is like, we're not intolerant of people who want to be called they, them, but for them to be angry at us because we don't call them they, them is intolerant. Right. That's like saying somebody who's a racist wearing a Klan outfit and they've got a hood on even, right? You can't even see their face. But then somebody says, you fucking racist. And they say, well, you only say that because I'm white. And then you're like, yeah, but we know you're white.
You're only saying that because the sheets I'm wearing are white.
Yeah, but it's like accusing a racist of being a color. You know, if you're this color who's against that color, well, if we call you that color, then we're being intolerant.
I
Like,
believe black people are inferior. What, you don't like that? You're intolerant of my views.
Of my white views.
Anyway,
it's such a bizarre
it is
argument.
It totally is.
Political power, they're typically trying to cut taxes and regulations, make the government smaller, and bolster constitutional freedoms like that of speech and religion.
Conservatives always want to cut taxes. Like, how, like, nobody wants to pay taxes. You don't want that extra expense. But when you look at what's the society around you, like, you need to pay for the things that you need to pay for, right?
Yeah, you don't want bridges to collapse. You want your kids to go to community centers. You want to have a swimming pool, like at a community center. You want to have programs, and taxes are for those things.
And make the government smaller. In the United States, every Democratic president, when he's left, has had a surplus. Every conservative president who's left has had a huge deficit. Because what she doesn't mention is conservatives are for war. I'd like to say nowadays that liberals aren't for war either, but that's not true. Everyone's for war that's in power because it makes the powerful rich. But still, the old beliefs are that liberals would be against war, and that would, so you're not blowing the budget paying huge defense bill.
That doesn't sound very authoritarian, does it? Progressive policy
Stop.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound authoritarianism. Okay, so small government, like a dictator, is about the smallest government there is.
That's right.
Many problems are caused when the government is too small.
Yeah.
You know, here in Toronto, we just got our lovely Ontario Premier has reduced city council in Toronto to 25 seats. The biggest city in Canada now has the same amount of government as a small city like Ottawa.
Right.
And that's so that he can control them.
That's
so that
right.
There's less people to cause conflict. Right.
I'll go back to Mike Harris, where they cut all the water testers for all the wells, and then people got Ebola or whatever it was. They all got.
Yeah.
People died. Many people died because no one's testing the water, right?
The Supreme Court in the United States has 12 people on it, right?
Yep.
Which is insane. There should be at least double that, because right. you know, it's so easy, especially when a president can appoint, which is also insane.
That's a crazy.
They get to just.
There are conservative judges and there's liberal judges. Like, how is that? Why? How is that possible?
Yeah, like they should be judges. Not one or the other. They should be bipartisan. Is that the term? I think.
Yeah.
They should not have be in anybody's pocket. But what ends up happening is that every president is like going, "Who's gonna die? Who's gonna die?" That's great, because whoever dies, we get to replace them, right? And it's like this is a bizarre situation. So you have 12 people, and that's how they overturn Roe versus Wade.
Yep.
Because there's only 12. It's easy to make it biased.
It's like so few could tip the scales. Anyway, I'm going to keep going.
Always raises taxes, expands regulations, increases the size of government, and now curtails free speech. To a
conservatives would be just as fast to curtail free speech that they don't like. Right? Don't talk to me about free speech, because America has a concept the country was built on. Literally, America was built on the concept of free speech. When people say, people back in 1772, like when they said the king is taxing us and then we're not seeing the representation here, what did people do? They use free speech. They go to pubs and give speeches. They print out pamphlets and spread. It's built on fucking free speech.
She has here regulations, expands regulations. Oh, how dare they? How dare they have regulations?
Yeah, regulations.
Don't you want regulations?
Don't you want metal shavings in your food? What's the problem with that, man?
Don't you want them to check the airplane before it takes off?
Want someone to make sure those bolts were tightened on the engine cowling?
Yeah. Don't you want the doctor to have gone to school? I'm a brain surgeon.
Exactly.
I think.
Regulation. Ugh, as she likes to say. Anyway, I'm going to continue.
Conservative, that sounds authoritarian. Well, now that you've heard a few of their arguments, do you dislike conservatives less than you did before?
Thank you so much for this video. And now I know why I hate conservatives.
Not even a little? I'm Amla
Nope.
Epinobi, host of Unapologetic at PragerU.com for
Did you
Prager
say
University.
Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Yeah, she's not related though to Obi-Wan. There's some outrage for the day.
Yeah, exactly. That's your 5 minutes of hate. What
Like that's
time
such a shitty way to argue for the conservative cause though too. It's like because all those things are verifiable lies.
Yeah. Or at least grossly misconstrued that it equals a lie.
Yeah.